And how does it evolve for each of us? It's a question that I think about a lot. And we have a very short 2-minute video that we want you to watch before we do the next session.
Mr. Ratan Tata is different. When I met him for the first time, I was over the moon. And every time I meet him, see him, my respect for him only increases.
Whenever you meet him, his energy and his passion are probably beyond what a 25-year-old entrepreneur would have. It is so exciting and energizing to meet him. His knowledge about my business is always higher than me. He always knows the kind of questions he asks me are always, puts me thinking about, about business and about people, things that I wouldn't have thought.
Mr. Tata is the Paul McCartney of Indian business. He is timeless, classy, and represents a strange mix of daring and tradition.
Mr. Tata is synonymous with Mr. Inspiration. His commitment to the startup ecosystem created a floodgate of confidence.
He has accomplished so much, taught so much, invested in startups, new ideas. He's an encouragement for the whole country, for the young India, for the startup ecosystem.
What he has done for India, not just within top league business circles, but with people far and wide across the country, from Aam Aadmi to top businessmen, is unmatched by anyone that I have seen at least.
I love him for all that. But more than all this, I love him for the human being that he is.
His humility is actually really, really inspiring. Ola would not have been the same company had I not had these opportunities to interact with him. Sir, the time that I have spent with you and the time I will probably spend more with you in the coming years is so very dear to me, and nothing can take the place of those interactions. And the entire Indian startup ecosystem is really lucky to have somebody like Mr. Tata really committed to our cause, and I really thank you very deeply for your support.
Thank you for all that you have done, Mr. Tata. It is a privilege to have met you, be working with you, and continuously learn from you.
So with that, Mr. Tata, shall we start our session? I think, as you can see from those videos, we reached out to a few CEOs and asked them to tape themselves just using their cell phone, if you will, and send it to us. And we will share the full videos of everyone who sent it, which we couldn't share with all of us here. But I was just so touched by the deep emotion they felt for you.
You embarrass me, but thank you anyway.
Most of my friends know I like doing that a lot. So, are you comfortable? I know last year when we did this, we forgot to give you a cushion. Okay. So, I think it wouldn't be a surprise if I said that the startup ecosystem, the entrepreneurs have missed you in the last 5 months. I think we had taken your involvement for granted. That happens when you're available and, as encouraging as you have been. And, we've been spoiled to expect that you would give your time to this community continuously. And so we are hoping that now we can expect you back with the same vigor amongst us and meeting these entrepreneurs, and as you can see from Bhavesh and Shraddha and others, you do make a very deep impact.
going to respond a little long-windedly. When I retired, which is the end of 2012, and looked at a new life, I hit upon investing and interacting with the startup community as a new page in my life. Leaving big business, crores of rupees, large competitive challenges behind. And I became so excited by what I saw and what I experienced in the startup community. Innovation, great passion for what was hopefully being nurtured as a new unicorn of the Indian startup community, that I really gave much more of my attention, much more of my time to this because it stimulated me. The last 5 months put me back forcibly into the older mold. And I really long to be back in the startup community with the vigor, with the innovation, with the challenges. And as of the 23rd of February, I'm back. I look forward to that day with greater vigor. I think the challenges over these last several months for me personally, as also for the startup community, have been changing. Mr. Trump has given new challenges, and I'm quite sure we can reinvent ourselves to meet those challenges and look back at having made a difference. So I look forward to reinserting myself in a community that gives me tremendous stimulation, and I hope I can make a contribution to them as we go forward.
I think with that announcement, and this is being live streamed by the way, I know that the lines are going to be long. So, and your team over there, I know that they're dreading all the calls they're going to get, which have never been less, but now there'll be even more. We all know that you enjoy spending time with entrepreneurs. That's very obvious. Each time I've seen you with them, it's very obvious to each one of them when they meet you. And is there something beyond just the personal joy you get from doing this and the benefit they get from that? Is there a purpose that's larger than that in terms of the impact and the relevance of leaving behind stories, knowledge, experiences that can shape and impact our future here on India startup next generation that can leapfrog?
I don't know if I'm truly answering your question, but I think for years and years when I was in business, I felt that India, which had come through years of license raj and joint ventures, Indian industry had been timid in terms of how it addressed the opportunities that existed. By contrast, the startup community was young people willing to take greater risks, driven by the passion of what they thought the economy needed or the environment needed, and were willing to stake their immediate future and give all of themselves to that task. Bhavesh was and is one of such people who you admire because of what they've been able to do, and there are many others of the same nature. I think that what industry, big or small, startup or traditional, have to do is to understand that they must think big. India is a big country, it's a large market of growing capability of consumption. And if you think small, you're overextended or overindulged before you know it. We built in the past airports that were too small before they were completed. We built train services that are inadequate because the market's bigger than what was expected. But if you think big, if you're willing to take the risk, if you're willing to face the challenges, India presents a great opportunity. And in many ways, I'm not saying this because I'm here, in many ways, the startup activity in the country has been an igniter of that passion of thinking big, leading and not following, and not being afraid to venture into areas that hitherto were considered only available to the big boys, etc. I think it's also symbolic that India has been recognized in terms of startups by the international finance community, the investors from other countries who put large amounts of money behind some of the young people who have good ideas. And we, as investors and as supporters of this new community, must accept that there will be some failures, and then there will be some areas where you have to stake your faith in what is being done and stay with it. But this is the new India of tomorrow that Mr. Modi and others have been projecting. An India that stands on its own, an India that is willing to take risks and is willing to look beyond the shores of India for its growth. So we're sitting here with the heartbeat of India in the future. We should not let this moment pass. And I compliment you on being one of the people who have made this happen, and we are all together because there are people like you who are giving or leading the battle to recognize this community in terms of what it is.
And now it's a touche because you're embarrassing me. So
Touche there.
Sometimes I'm in a hurry to share my life learnings, I think, with my girls. And teenage children teach you to temper your enthusiasm for giving advice. I want to understand from you, when you're on a board and you've groomed so many leaders, how do you approach giving advice?
First of all, not very many people ask for my advice. So I can throw that back at you and say that there are not many occasions when that happens. But if you were giving advice, it seems to me that you need to have humility in dealing with it, not patronizing the person or the institute in forcing your views on them. I think for several years there's been one issue which has been with me. It happened in the Harvard Business School and has traveled with me through the years. I came away from the business school with confusion in my mind in terms of what I'd learned. But one issue that stayed with me was a professor's statement that in whatever you do, put yourself in the other person's shoes first. So giving advice, I think, involves you transporting yourself mentally into a person's shoes who seeks the advice. It gives you a different perspective to, it's always easy to give advice sitting in an armchair. Very difficult to visualize how you can make a difference sitting in the shoes of the person who's asking that advice, the person who's facing the challenges. And I think humility and being able to transform yourself into that person give you the ability to see the challenges and the problems in his view, and maybe give better advice in that rather than force your views on him.
I think the difficulty with all things is putting it in practice. So, but this is great input, and I have several of our portfolio CEOs that are sitting there. I see them nodding, saying, I hope Vani is listening to Mr. Tata. So, but look, remind me if I'm not doing that when I'm in a board meeting, so, or don't. So, but, some leaders are enigmatic. I put you in that category. And however, in a different way. Today, personal brands seem to matter. We have celebrity chefs, we have celebrity CEOs, of course, we have celebrity trainers. And I wasn't looking at you, Gopi. So, and I'm always, it's unique to India, but not in a good way, that our front page news is all about young people who have barely done much more than, raise funding from those foreign investors. So, and media has its pitfalls. Of course, it has a power too. And the young CEOs sometimes don't fully understand the pitfalls, they understand the power, or at least they think they understand the power. What advice would you give for celebrity CEOs, which is where this country is headed today?
To me, it seems that what I said a few minutes ago would be a must. Let success not go to anybody's head. And let that young CEO who had the passion and the risk-taking ability to start something stood the test and passed the test of having been successful, not look down on anybody who is starting the same business again, or in the same mold again. And all I'm trying to say is that they should be humble, thinking that they know everything and instead being open, helpful, cooperative to another young entrepreneur, supporting them with their success would be a great way to go forward and would transform a young entrepreneur into a statesman. I think all of us should want to make a difference, whether it's ourselves or see it happen. We should be happy to support another potential success and to feel that we made a difference or that we helped. And maybe one way is for successful entrepreneurs to foster new entrepreneurs to do what you're doing and to do what couldn't resist embarrassing you again. To grow this community and not let it wither away. I think India is showing that the country that was called the country of shopkeepers has turned into an efficient business environment with innovation and risk-taking ability and a huge market that hasn't been explored hitherto. So I think humility and support of the new community is what is really needed. Let's not lose the moment that we have. Let's not lose the momentum that we have, and let it not die. Let's just build on what we've created for ourselves, which I think 15, 20 years ago, would we be sitting in this room as we are today, all equal? People who have seen success in the past were people who either had hand-downs or were extremely lucky or had big money from traditional sources, banks, etc., push their way. But where were the people that really worked with their sleeves rolled up and had an idea and converted that idea into success? Where were the people who fought the big business people with a new way to do things? This is something we should all be proud of in terms of what we have done, and we should never let this moment die. We should never let this idea and this today's small community just wither away. The United States has often been deemed to be successful because it has the ability to reinvent itself. And I think this community has the ability to reinvent India in terms of meeting the challenges of tomorrow. So sitting in this room and other rooms of a similar nature are people with ingenious ideas who could make a huge difference in the India of tomorrow. So hopefully we should move away from blocking people's success, frowning on success, frowning on competition. We should instead embrace competition. We should embrace success. And we should be a part of it. So that's my view for tomorrow.
So maybe you answered this question already, but I'll ask this explicitly. There is a raging debate about protectionism, at least on social media, and it's framed in the context of internet companies and what's coined as capital dumping by large multinationals who are selling at a negative gross margins here, though they're not doing that in their home country. So there's a question around, should there be government framework for protectionism to innovation from India and capital dumping. Any views on that?
I don't think you can generalize because it takes many forms. There's traditionally this feeling that liberalize for me but not for others. Protect me but let it be in level playing field, which is a common term in every other way, but protect me. This is the dictum of yesterday. I think unfair competition that's done by some corporations need to be controlled. But the internet has opened a highway for commerce, which is being used by this new startup community, and will also be used by conventional businesses when it suits them. So I think the regulator or the regulators need to focus on areas where there's unfair competition, which is done to kill the newer startups, but ensure that there is enough latitude and enough of a playing field that everyone has their chance. So I can only say that someone like me would look for a more open environment, as open an environment as we can expect, and we should not be concerned about blocking as we see at various times. Sometimes the blocking is worthwhile blocking, and other times it is just stifling competition. It's a difficult question to answer in general terms.
The other crisis of the moment in India is, of course, liquidity and exits. And they're in the dilemma for entrepreneurs on balancing long-term vision with these, we could call them short-term concerns, and really implicit within that is finding that right balance between growth and profitability. It seems to be the sort of question of repeated every generation. So what should this generation's choices and mantra be in finding that balance of growth versus profitability?
I don't think I can answer that because luck also is a factor. You can have a situation where you take an action based on intuition or just personal judgment, which is the right one, and the one that has a great deal of study behind it and due diligence is the wrong one. So I can't answer that question.
Is there an example? How would, if there is there an example that comes to mind when you said that? Is there something else that's drawn from a life lesson?
Oh yeah, there are many things that happen, sometimes beyond your control, sometimes because sometimes because you have a passion that blindsides you from seeing the hard truth of letting go. So sometimes the right move is to let go. The other times you have intuition that tell you to hang in there and you come out successful. So if I'm to make a comment, I would just say there's an element of intuition that's in all of us, and you should let that play its role also, rather than just go by numbers. I mean, what you feel in your heart, you could fail, but most of the time, that intuition
I said sometimes I'm in a hurry to share my lessons, but I'm also sometimes, or most times, in a hurry to learn too. So, in that context, I would ask you is, facing crisis, which small or large, almost all of us need to at various points in our life. So, is facing how we face crisis something that is learned or something that's our nature? How do you approach facing crisis? Do you have ritual? Do you have a habit? How do you face your crisis?
I think the greatest textbook for leadership is facing crises and dealing with crises. And you often wonder where that leadership comes from. It just comes to the surface at those times. How do you foresee or deal with a terrorist attack on Bombay? And how do you deal with the heroes that emerge from that crisis? And how do you deal with where did the leadership come from where there was leadership displayed? Where did the courage come from? People that you considered to be mild and timid and nervous seem to switch off and become leaders of a situation during a crisis. And this applies in business also. Each time you have a crisis, be it financial, be it a failure for the marketplace to work out as you expected, how you deal with that crisis is an issue. Maybe the most telling thing is there are leaders who deal with the crisis. There are other leaders who cover up the crisis. And the only thing I would say is that you have a crisis, you deal with it in the correct way so that you can hold your head high and say that you made a difference. Not that you swept it under the carpet and lived with the crisis knowing that it's dead or dying or decaying.
So in wrapping up our session, because we could go for a long time, what is it that you believe a person should never compromise on, and maybe by extension, how do you apply that to CEOs in leaving behind advice? What should they think of things that they should never compromise on?
Well, I think every CEO faces an issue of doing what is right, and that doing what is right may be the most difficult thing he or she has to face. Many of us are tempted to take the easy route of doing whatever is most acceptable. And deep down inside, most of us feel that that route is not the right thing to do. I think the difference in a real leader comes when that leader is willing to face the consequences, but to do whatever is right, to go home at night and say, I didn't succumb, I made a difference. I think that's, in my view, the mark of a true leader, to face difficulty when it's there, and that's the kind of spirit that will lead the country on in the future. It's not the easiest thing to do. This applies in politics also. But when it's there, I think people recognize that somebody faced a difficult situation because they thought it was the right thing to do or to act in the right way. If I might take an example that comes to mind, you remember many years ago there was a mad guy that was injecting cyanide into Tylenol capsules. People were dying in the US, nobody understood why. And the company addressed that. It withdrew millions of dollars worth of Tylenol tablets or capsules from the marketplace. Not knowing what caused it, they finally found the person who was doing this and reintroduced Tylenol as what they called a caplet, which is a tablet looking like a capsule. That took real guts to write off millions of dollars to, to junk inventory, but they protected the brand. They did what was right. They didn't go into a public PR exercise of considering that people were making a mistake. They addressed the issue head on. And that's the kind of thing that I would consider to be real leadership. I don't know whom I'm talking about. I'm not protecting a CEO that acted, but that kind of thing is a mark of leadership which takes guts. And if you had a room full or a nation full of such leaders, you can't help but believe that you're going to be in a nation that stands up to be counted.
You know, you started with telling us about when you retired, you found getting involved with the young companies energizing, and perhaps you know, but maybe not to the level of impact that you've done by that simple act, and perhaps not such a simple act, because for some reason the act of you giving your time and encouragement to entrepreneurs has made a huge difference to them. There are many others in India who also are engaged with the startup ecosystem, but the curiosity, the listening and the mentorship that I've seen you give has meant a lot, I know, to the community here and the broader ecosystem. So it really means a lot to us that you are here with us today. And I want to thank you for taking this time. Giving time is never easy, but this is something that collectively we want to thank you for making it happen today.
Thank you, Vani. It's always a pleasure.